U.S. President Donald Trump has announced a 35% tariff on Canadian goods to go into effect on August 1st.
President Trump's latest tariff announcements, his 35% levy on Canadian imports, has certainly been felt by the market.
Trump, who's just announced tariffs for Canada imports. The president saying moments ago on Truth Social that there will be a 35% tariff on goods imported from Canada starting on August 1st.
President Trump's has been tightening across the continent for months. But tonight it reaches a point that forces North America to reconsider where real authority sits. A revelation from Mark Carney triggered a wave of questions few expected. Washington issued tariff threats while Ottawa stayed silent, and analysts who long assumed Canada would fold are beginning to see the limits of their assumptions. Something deeper and more consequential has been quietly unfolding behind these decisions, and that shift is now starting to redefine the balance between two countries that have shaped one another for generations. Ottawa's carefully measured response has altered the strategic landscape, challenging assumptions about influence, sovereignty, and the boundaries of patience. Breaking developments in Ottawa reveal an unexpected turn in the relationship between the Canadian government and President Donald Trump. Financial circles insisted Carney would give way the moment pressure escalated. Political commentators predicted his Bay Street background would push him towards short-term calm rather than long-term resilience. Markets anticipated compromise. Policy expert predicted accommodation. But none of those expectations matched the reality Carney described in a detailed conversation with Toronto Life. That exchange has changed how many observers understand the deeper structures driving diplomatic confrontation. According to Carney, the text from Trump began without warning, late at night, early in the morning, sometimes in rapid sequence, filled with capital letters and urgency. Carney spoke about these messages in the same calm, steady tone he uses to discuss interest rates or global financial systems. That composure is not a minor detail. It is a hinge on which the entire dynamic shifts. His account reaches far beyond the interview itself. It reflects a turning point in North American diplomacy, where pressure campaigns rely on speed and alarm while institutional discipline relies on preparation and collective judgment. What Carney described as a clash between personal tactics built on immediacy and national procedures built over decades. That difference explains why Canada's position strengthened just as Washington's leverage began to weaken to iron the Oval Office meeting. Trump followed a familiar pattern. He offered his personal number seconds after formal introductions ended, a gesture he has used throughout business, politics, and international negotiation. To him, direct private communication is a tool of influence. It allows him to bypass structure, sidestep protocol, and apply pressure without institutional barriers. Speed and surprise are his methods. But Carney recognized instantly what those tactics meant. Personal contact from a head of state changes the nature of negotiation. It risks stripping away the buffers that protect national interests from impulsive demands. Trump's messages arrived at unpredictable hours, without regard for timing or context. What he did not realize is that Canadian institutions prepare far in advance for exactly these moments. By the time he typed a message, teams in Ottawa had already mapped out scenarios, assessed risks, and prepared measured responses. His burst of urgency collided with a system designed to move at a pace set by expertise rather than emotion. When Toronto Life asked Carney to define his guiding principle, he gave an answer that clarified the foundation of Canada's strategy. Canada would not accept any deal that failed to serve the country's long-term interests. The goal was a great outcome for Canada, not a convenient one. The message was unmistakable. Ottawa would not negotiate from fear or impatience. National sovereignty was not up for trade in exchange for temporary market calm. The clarity of that declaration surprised critics who had misread Carney's demeanor during his first Oval Office appearance in October 2025. Commentators claimed he appeared subdued. They assumed that by avoiding confrontation, he was conceding ground. What they failed to understand is that Trump thrives when conflict becomes performance. He gains energy from escalating tension. Matching that energy would have strengthened his position, not Canada's. Carney refused to enter that dynamic. He understood that the cameras in the room were almost all American and that Trump was performing for a domestic audience. Fighting for attention would have shifted the narrative in Trump's favor. The moment Trump suggested Canada might consider becoming the 51st state, Carney responded with a simple, controlled line: never, never, ever. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was a direct reinforcement of principle, one that holds regardless of audience. When asked how he maintained his discipline as Trump twisted data, belittled Canada, and addressed him casually while demanding formality himself, Carney explained that he refused to focus on tone. Trump, he said, was addressing domestic political concerns. Interrupting him would have handed Trump exactly the kind of moment he could weaponize for political spin. Carney's priority was national interest, not personal irritation. That approach ultimately shaped the trajectory of the next phase of negotiation. The interview also explored the complicated question of respect. The journalist noted that Trump's comments about Canada often contained a mix of bravado and acknowledgement. Carney agreed that even within Trump's theatrics, there is an underlying recognition of Canada's importance, a recognition rooted in decades of partnership on trade, security, and political cooperation. But Carney made clear that these ties do not override foundational principles. When he repeated his firm rejection of the 51st state idea, the meaning was absolute. Alliances may evolve, tensions may rise, strategies may shift, but national independence is not a variable in negotiation. His calm assertion of that principle is what ultimately reshaped the balance of power in this confrontation. This moment represents the heart of the broader conflict. Trump's approach depends on personal dominance and efforts to force concessions by overwhelming his counterpart. That method can work against individuals who operate through private networks or fear immediate consequences. It does not work against a system built on collective decision-making. Carney explained that pressure concentrated on one person cannot override a structure designed to distribute responsibility, assess risk, and protect national stability. Canada's institutional culture operates through a process that cannot be bent by attempts to fabricate urgency between October and November 2025. The consequences of this structural difference became unmistakable. Trump escalated tariff threats. Carney responded by emphasizing that Canadian procedures require consultation with stakeholders before any commitments are made. Trump demanded instant answers. Ottawa followed established timelines. Trump sent texts at irregular hours. Carney replied during professional hours. None of this signaled hesitation. It signaled strategy. Trump's ability to unsettle opponents collapses when they refuse to operate on the tempo he sets. A major miscalculation from Trump's side stems from a belief that Carney entered political leadership unprepared for this level of pressure. That view ignores the reality of his background. Toronto Life traces his path through global finance, guiding the Bank of Canada during the 2008 crisis, leading the Bank of England through Brexit, and coordinating policy during turbulent market shifts. These responsibilities require discipline under conditions far more complex than bilateral dispute. Trump sees only a prime minister. In truth, he faces someone who has spent decades building and managing systems capable of absorbing shocks without unraveling. The interview also explored Carney's earlier years in Toronto, particularly his time on Bay Street. The journalist suggested he left because he grew tired of a material-driven culture. Carney clarified that understanding. Public service, he said, had always been a core expectation in his family. His career path consistently aligned with roles that allowed him to serve the country. This detail matters because it highlights a central difference in motivation. Trump operates from a worldview shaped by personal leverage. Carney's decisions grow out of a responsibility to strengthen national institutions. One negotiates through pressure. The other negotiates through structure. That fundamental mismatch shapes every stage of their interaction. Then came the most revealing moment of the interview. Carney stated that the relationship between Canada and the United States will not return to its earlier form. Canadians, he explained, have learned a critical lesson about relying too closely on a partner capable of dramatic policy swings from one election cycle to the next. That line marks a turning point. Canada intends to reduce its dependence on the American market and expand its alliances. Trump aimed to push Canada toward deeper integration. Instead, his tariffs and rhetoric produced the opposite effect. The country began diversifying relationships because reliance on an unpredictable neighbor is a risk no stable government can ignore. Throughout the discussion, Carney showed no resentment. His tone was steady and precise. This clarity signals that Canada's shift is not rooted in emotion. It is shaped by strategy and shaped by changing realities rather than reactions to Trump's behavior. The conversation eventually turned toward internal Canadian politics, specifically Pierre Poilievre. Carney offered professional compliments, acknowledging work ethic, discipline, and commitment to family. These comments reflect his adherence to institutional norms that maintain respect between political opponents. It mirrors the approach he used with Trump: acknowledge the individual, prioritize the national interest. Toronto Life then raised a question familiar to anyone in public life: is it possible to disconnect from the constant weight of leadership? Carney admitted it is extremely difficult. He mentioned morning runs that create brief clarity, though even those moments fade once he reaches a crosswalk and must shift attention to traffic and timing. The interviewer joked that Trump would send another text at that moment. Carney laughed but offered a practical solution: silent mode. He refuses to let unexpected messages create reactions he never intended to make. Trump can send texts at any hour. He can raise tariffs. He can speak of statehood. None of it moves Canada toward compromise. Carney responded with the same line that defined the turning point of this conflict: never, never, ever. Canadian sovereignty remains fixed regardless of noise, pressure, or attempts at intimidation. Across this confrontation, a consistent pattern emerges. Trump pushes. Ottawa evaluates. Trump demands immediacy. Ottawa follows institutional timelines. Trump depends on personal tactics. Ottawa relies on collective strategy. The more he escalates, the stronger Canada's sense of independence becomes. This conflict reveals a broader truth. Power in North America is shifting. Influence now depends less on threats and more on resilience. Carney represents this change. His years on Bay Street, his leadership in global finance, and his commitment to public service combine into a governing style that cannot be shaken by late-night messages or urgent demands. So, what do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe for more, and turn on notifications.